between the Navy and the Army and the Marines, they have these different hoo-ah, like these exclamations.
When I think about the Army one, I think about Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman. He was an Army colonel, I think a retired Army colonel, and he just kept doing it over and over again in that movie. And frankly, it made me lose respect for it.
Welcome to the Scuttlebutt. I am your host, Shaun Hall, the Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. We're a small nonprofit based in Pittsburgh, PA. Our mission is to create communities of listening around veterans to educate, connect, heal, and inspire. We welcome you as part of that community that we are looking to build. This program, the Scuttlebutt, was created to highlight the educational element of our mission by discussing recent military headlines and topics to help bridge the civilian-military divide. I myself am not a veteran, but joining me today to talk about the Marines in our third part of the six-part series on the branches of the military are three Marines. I don't know which way I'm pointing because Zoom always moves us all around. But first, I'll introduce James, my wonderful co-host, 17-year Marine veteran. James, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And I'll go to Haya. Haya, thank you so much for joining us as well. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Haya Eason. I'm originally from Detroit. I'm currently in Pittsburgh, 19 years. I'm a Marine veteran, served from 1981 to 1990 in the field of 0100, 0121, which is Service Record Book Administration.
Thank you, Haya. And also joining us, Josh Cannon. Thank you so much for joining us. Josh, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, I was likewise in the Marine Corps. I served from 2000 to 2005, and I was an Arabic cryptologic linguist. One of the smaller, 2671 is the MOS number, one of the smaller fields in the Marine Corps. I'm a Pittsburgh native. I left Pittsburgh for the Marine Corps, and then I came back for college, and then I left again to get a PhD at the University of Chicago. But now I'm back in Pittsburgh, and I'm here to stay.
Well, thank you guys all. We're going to dive into some of these jobs a little bit later when we get into our main story. But as our audience, if you'd be so kind, we just ask that you please help spread the Scuttlebutt by liking, sharing, subscribing, ringing the bell on YouTube. We want you to be the first to be able to get these episodes as soon as they're released every Monday. And leave us a comment on YouTube or send me an email at sean@veteransbreakfastclub.com. We always love hearing from our audience and being able to bring that up in the Scuttlebutt and respond to it. One bit of not so much mail, but an interesting announcement is everybody's heard of TikTok. The Veterans Breakfast Club recently went viral on TikTok. We have a couple 100,000 likes on a video, which is pretty incredible. We'll put the link here into this video and also on our website. Would love to have you part of our now viralness. I don't even know what you would call it. And maybe we'll pull in some more viewers, which would be great. So first off, I want to jump into then our segment of a word or phrase of the week. And this is Marine specific. We have heard of the OORAH. I'm sure you've heard OORAH said in movies and on TV. And what I saw that is it's a Marine greeting or an expression of enthusiasm similar to the Army's OOAH, which I heard could potentially be problematic. And I'd be interested to dive in more into that. Or the Navy's HOOYAH, which I've also not heard of. But the shortened form RAH, however, is a bit more versatile. You could be agreeing with someone by saying RAH. You could be excited about going on a mission by exclaiming RAH. Or you could be asking the platoon if everyone understands RAH. And I'm sure I sound horrible doing all of those things.
It's not that bad. You're actually pretty much you're on point. It's more of the inflection.
Okay.
It's sometimes in a source of motivation or to enlighten the crowd in how you say it. So when everybody's sitting there, you're spitting your word of the day, this, that, another, hey, does everybody else say "Hoorah"? Like it's robust. It's in your face.
Mm-hmm. What is the difference then between the Navy and the Army and the Marines? They have these different hoo-ah, like these exclamations. I
never heard of the Navy's exclamation, but when I think about the Army one, I think about Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman. Mm-hmm. He was an Army colonel, I think a retired Army colonel, and he just kept doing it over and over again in that movie.
Hoo-ah! 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 No, I'm just getting warmed up.
And frankly, it made me lose respect for it.
How often do you say it? Is it something that's a daily, hourly? Is it as often as in the movies?
We only, you know, when we did PT and someone accomplished, you know, something like a high score, or if we had some kind of training and the top 2 or 3 people, you know, everyone else that didn't make that number would cheer on the individuals who came in 1 or 2. So for us, it was more of a Roger that, confidence, good job, you know, way to go. But
Mhm.
you know, you scream it, and it's kind of like I think you're releasing, like, OORAH, like, go ahead, you got it, there you go.
Mm-hmm. So it's building camaraderie very
Mhm.
early. Yeah.
Usually in a group setting, you know, the PTs, formations, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's the
Yeah,
only time you only really ever say it like 1-to-1.
I think the group setting is a big part of it because in my mind it's a little bit similar to cadence. Like when you run as a platoon, someone sings cadence and that tells you when to hit the left foot on the ground and keeps everybody in sequence. I suppose there's probably a better word for that. But often if you're in a platoon and your platoon commander or somebody is speaking to you all and they want to get a reaction out of you, the platoon as one will go OORAH. And it's in my mind it's like cadence. It's getting you all on the same page. It's getting you all to turn into one thing that's shouting out OORAH.
And then this also got shortened. I don't know if it was shortened from the beginning into RAW, but RAW can be that sort of like, I understand what you're saying. I get it type response as well.
Absolutely. It's, you know, if you're sitting there and we're going over the plan of the day and I'm sitting here trying to make sure that you understand what I'm saying and get across to it. It's like, hey, you understand Ra? Ra? And
And my response should be RAW.
Ra, Ra, Ura. But
Ra,
but
hoorah.
it's always, it's that, again, that'd be me talking to a group.
Okay.
It's that synergy, that syncing of
Mhm.
everybody's got it.
Yes, like a verbal applause.
And how does this relate to in reading some books and things? I heard get some. Is get some part of the Marines? I see you guys smiling. So is get some in some ways that same OORAH feeling? No.
It depends on situation.
Okay.
That's true. I mean,
Situation.
my experience is it's kill people, get some
Oh.
dead bodies.
Oh my.
Wow.
Or even like again, like if you could take it back to the PT, let's not kill a body. You're killing your own body. You're up there and you're doing, you know, you're up there and you're slamming those pull-ups or you're doing your crunches and you're, let's say you're going for the Ironman, the different competitions we had, and all of a sudden you're 30 40 deep. You're just getting it in. You're like, that's it. Get some. Go ahead, get it in. Get it in. Go ahead, get some. And you're like, yes, it's and
A
everybody's out there
motivator.
yelling, "Get some, hoorah!" And dudes there just slaying his own body. So
I also wanted to bring up the term devil dogs and sort of hear your responses to what that term means to you as former Marines. And I should say it's not former Marines, right? You should always, once a Marine, always a Marine. So I'll correct myself there. As Marines, what is your response to devil dogs?
My experience with it, it was always, and I'd love to hear if this is experienced differently, but it's always something that a senior it's a name for the Marine, and it's something, but it's only a senior person would say it to a junior person. And sometimes it gets shortened to devils. Hey, devils, get over here. But it was always, I never would have called somebody that outranked me a devil dog, but I myself was called devil dog, or a group of us were called devil dogs all the time by a platoon sergeant or lieutenant or what have you. So that's my experience with it. And there's a history to it, but I'm sure James and Haya know it just as well as I do.
Haya, you want it?
Just, being a female in the military, some of the hardcore terms and terminology, it just didn't do anything for me to me. And I'm pretty rough around the edges. I don't look like that, but I'm pretty rough around the edges still. So the term devil dog, I when I would hear it, I understood it to be, as the other gentleman said, from a senior official down to a lower ranking person, and generally as a group, kind of an encouragement or a boost of confidence. But I don't think I received it in the way that it was meant to be received. And the reason why I say that is because my mind says devil dog. What is a devil dog? What does that look like? And the only thing I could connect it to was the Marine Corps hymn when it says, you know, first to fight. So first to fight, meaning they run to the battle. They're like this ferocious animal that has been, you know, prepared and trained to do battle, do war, take no prisoners. And, you know, from a visual standpoint, that's pretty rough. But if you're just looking at it from your end in terms of, you know, national defense and self-preservation, then I get it, because we're talking about how men were prepared and trained for war and what they experienced in that war environment. But again, because, you know, the hardness of some terms, it's not that I, is the word, refuted those terms. It was just collectively, you know, it was the congratulations devil dog. And I was like, okay, whatever that is. But I knew that term was not new. That was a traditioned term. Someone gave that to the Marines and they held on to it and they were very proud of it. I was in administration, so I didn't feel like, you know, I did anything with that.
Right. Well, that's such an interesting perspective on it. And James, you have some history on the term, correct?
It's an original World War I nickname given to us by, I think it was the Germans.
Yeah.
And when we fought in the battle for Belleau Wood, so 1918.
Mm-hmm.
And they ran newspapers because the Belleau Wood, I think if I remember right, so foggy, nasty, the conditions weren't apt, and the Marines went hog wild and did as much damage as they could in that battle, which ended up leading us to win that battle at Belleau Wood. And they kept on saying Teufelhutten, which I think the translation rolled over to devil dogs, that they fought so hard that they thought they were like ravenous hell creatures just showing up out of nowhere. And so we took that. They actually ran it in newspapers for months in the country that they came up with the saying from, and we were like, yep, we'll take that. We'll own that.
Wow, that's such an incredible historical context to it. And Belleau Wood, I've heard other Marines talk about like the 3 battles that that the Marines are known for, and that's one of them. And I believe Iwo Jima is up there, and the third being Chosen. Just these battles that just carry so much history within the Corps. That I was so excited to go back and sort of read about these battles to find out as Marines and coming into the Marines after these battles had happened, how much you hear about that historical context as you're being in basic training. There's obviously like, they'll talk to you about you're joining an elite squad that's been around for centuries and has context to it that you need to understand that you're a part of that now.
Absolutely, because I mean, there isn't a part like as I'm sitting here thinking about boot camp and all the things that are historic. Every even part of it even plays into, like, everybody thinks the dress blues are, you know, they are one of the best uniforms out there. But when you start to look at the individual pieces of the uniform, you don't realize, to the naked eye, to you, sir, they don't make any sense until you realize there's 7 belt loops and there's a reason for it. The belt, but the buttons, there's a reason for the number of them, where everything is situated. There's so much. The red blood stripe means something. It's just not a piece of uniform that's like, oh, look, that's colorful, that's pretty. No, a lot of everything that they do, even the points in the cover, have a meaning. So,
wow. See, I didn't know that. And that's part
a
of
lot of history is stooped into how that goes.
As a reader and thinking back, I think if the booklet they gave us about the history of the Marines and the reason why we should be we should feel honored to be a part of the Marines, even though we were in boot camp, I wish that booklet had been given to me before I left, because when you're, falling asleep because, you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you have to do the PT run and then you have to do the training and then you have to clean your rifle and the rifle range and the gas chamber, it all got convoluted. So that for me, and I'm sure for others, by the time you graduated boot camp, you felt like you had accomplished something, but you in no way grasped what you were now becoming a part of, so that you could have that confidence as well moving forward to wherever you were going to be stationed in whatever field of training you were going to be in.
I do think I agree with you to a degree, Haya. Boot camp is basically all about memorization and not necessarily about understanding.
This is a great start to even just the main story of just talking about the Marines. We've already covered so much ground. But I do want to fit in our segment about military headlines, as we have a couple headlines to review. First up, being a new MRE is being produced, or at least tested at this point. The U.S. military is preparing for future fights that may see units dispersed and on their own for extended periods of time, so they are creating MREs that are lighter to carry. Scientists are prototyping a close combat assault ration containing an assortment of nutrient-dense energy bars that may augment the standard issue meals ready to eat or even replace them. Scientists at the Army's Combat Feeding Directorate in Natick, Massachusetts, have been able to reduce the weight of individual components by anywhere from 40 to 70% by using a drying technique. The goal is to achieve an overall weight reduction of 40%, allowing troops to carry more food without increasing their combat load. A similar reduction in volume by compressing the packaging is also possible. MREs on average weigh about 18 to 26 ounces and include weight-adding accoutrements, I love that word, such as flameless chemical heater and condiments. They include an entree and a number of sides and contain an average of 1,250 calories. VBC, I'll use this as a moment to plug us. We will be holding a year-end celebration on December 5th where we are going to have MREs that you can order and join us to eat. They will not be the lighter weight kind, but how many, when you guys would be out in the field, or Haya, if you've had MREs, do they feel too heavy to you? Is this something that they should be doing to lighten them?
I mean, the ones that we had, I didn't go out in the field very often, but the ones that we had did feel weighty, but I wasn't in even a combat training exercise. I don't think I can weigh in on that properly because I didn't do it as frequent enough, because that wasn't, one, my field, and two, we only had enough for the 3 days and then we were done. In addition, and then everything else we were carrying was just heavy. Now, talking to people who have been in the military more recently, I don't know what the weights are in terms of your equipment from what I carry and the equipment that they carry, and whether or not it will make a drastic difference. But I did think that that's an excellent idea. Just like the astronauts, if you can carry something that's just add water, and then you can find a river or a stream somewhere where you can find that, then that makes it easier for you to be able to quote unquote set up shop to have something to eat while you're continuing to travel on to where your mission is.
Josh, James, did you guys ever carry MREs with you out in the field? And if so, were you like, I can only take 2 or 3? Like these are just weighing me down too much?
I spent a lot of time in the field, but was never very far away, either from my Humvee or my light armored vehicle. So we just kept them on there.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we were. We were the same way. We artillery units, we have trucks, we tow everything. So the ability for us to have everything on the truck was right there. But on the off occasion where we had to do like field ops where we weren't on trucks, you learn how to adapt. You didn't put that whole big bulky MRE in your pack. You broke it down. You took it out of the package. You took the things you didn't want in it and just left what you needed. So this way you can easily access it and call it a night. And so to hear that they're going to make it, 40% lighter and about 300% drier than the original MRE that I just last had, I'm good. I'm all right. So
you guys might not be the people to give a glowing endorsement of eating an MRE, but
I was going to say MREs are bad enough. Now you're going to make it much more drier, which means it's going to have a lot less flavoring. So everybody get your adobo and seasoning and your hot sauce ready. This one's going to be a little rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I ate those for 6 months in my first deployment, and probably by month 2 or 3, I wasn't even heating them up anymore because I wasn't going for flavor. I was just going for calories. This was like, just give me whatever it is. I'm just gonna throw it in my mouth and then move on with life because eating has lost all pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving on to our next headline, the Navy SEALs rescued an American hostage. U.S. forces conducted a hostage rescue operation during the early hours of October 31st in northern Nigeria to recover an American citizen held hostage by a group of armed men, said the Pentagon spokesman Jonathan Hoffman in a media release. This American is safe and is now in the care of the U.S. Department of State. No U.S. military personnel were injured during the operation, he went on to say. The mission was undertaken by elite commandos as part of a major effort to free Walton, the American. He was 27, before his abductors could get far after taking him captive in Niger on October 26th. This was from the counterterrorism officials. They told this to ABC News. The operation involved the governments of the U.S., Niger, and Nigeria working together to rescue Walton quickly. The elite SEAL Team 6 carried out the rescue mission and killed all but one of the captors, according to officials with direct knowledge about the operation. The abduction was not considered terror-related, but hostages are often sold to terrorist groups, so it's good that they were able to recover him. This brings me to a question. As I started to read into this article and the idea of sort of special ops and the different branches and their special operations teams, what is your feeling on the differences between SEAL Team 6 or Green Berets, Rangers, Raiders, Force Recon, these ones that we hear about that are like, oh, these are the specialized soldiers. How different are these different groups, units, I should say?
My understanding is they often cross train with each other, but they are fairly different.
Mm-hmm.
Navy SEALs, I think they're trained, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but in addition to search and rescue, I think they're trained for explosives and, if you need a bridge taken out, they'll go and they'll set up explosives around that enemy bridge and blow it up. So they're pretty versatile, and obviously their reputation is very well earned. My understanding of the Green Berets is that their mission is to incite resistance within country. So they go in and they train rebellion fighters to fight against that own country. Reinforced reconnaissance, they're recon. I mean, if you get in a fight with them, you're going to regret it, but they are designed to do reconnaissance, to see things, to collect intelligence, and to scout. The Army Rangers, I never fully understood Army Rangers. I always assumed they were just a better version of the infantry, but the Rangers, they might have a more specific mission that I'm not aware of.
Mm-hmm. James, you were shaking your head on a couple of those. These,
though, you will definitely regret just thinking that you're just going to take Force Recon. I've had a few of their loved beloveds as like first sergeants and master gunnery sergeant. I mean, first sergeants in like on some of the administrative higher rankings, and they weren't nothing to play with. Like one of my favorite first sergeants of all time. But I only have a few. He was maybe like 5'5", younger guy, didn't look that old, but he wasn't the one you want to cross. And then one time he had his friends come over. We're like, oh, all of y'all are crazy. Like, it's bad when other Marines look at you like you're crazy. Like, we don't want it. We don't want it.
And our last headline, I saw a video on military.com about the Marines firing one of their biggest guns. If you've watched the Scuttlebutt before, you notice that James in the background has some artillery on his screen. And what I'd love to do is welcome our audience back for what I'd like to call a Scuttlebutt mini, where James and I are going to break down this video of Marines loading and firing this weapon. I'd love to hear James's take on this. We'll put a little teaser up here so you can sort of see them firing this gun. James, I'm really interested and excited to talk to you about that. But let's just go right into the main story, which we've already started to dive into, and just the Marine Corps. I want to open it up and sort of get your reactions to what makes the Marine Corps unique and why you decided to join it in the first place, as opposed to the other branches. Haya, would you like to go first?
Well, I did my homework, but I didn't put a lot down for this one, because no, my boyfriend enlisted, and I decided I was going with him. Now, I've said before on VBC that, had I been thinking more rationally, I would have joined the Navy or the Air Force, because I feel as though they would have been kinder to women. But because I was an athlete, like I said, the physical training was not the issue for me. It was, and I could take commands and follow orders. It was, I did not know that I was joining the Marine Corps. I did not know I was joining what I now know, regarding the history of this military branch. I didn't even know that they were a department of the Navy. So I just, went in and served my time. Once I left, it was different because I was like, oh my goodness. Oh, this is where the OORAH comes from. This is where the I'm gonna say it's a different level of respect for Marines. And I learned that the Marines is the smaller of the branches. And because it's the smaller of the branches, I don't come in contact with as many female Marines as some of the other branches. So, you kind of, you feel different, but you feel better, but I didn't feel elite.
Mm.
But smaller branch, the uniforms were sharp. I mean, most of the uniforms you see on the posters and such are of the male Marines. But even the female Marines, I've seen very few women in dress blues unless you go to a Marine Corps ball or a special ceremony. So, my joining the Marines was not because, I wanted to go and fight for my country necessarily. I joined during peacetime.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I was recruited in, and that's the way that I processed through. However, about 6 months before I was discharged, we received notification that our unit was getting ready to pre-deploy over to Iraq. And so I didn't get the chance to see the more serious side of serving in the military because I had, served 9 years and I decided to leave.
Mm-hmm. Hi, I want to definitely come back to this because I think you have such an interesting perspective coming into the smallest branch, but also the most male-dominated branch. And I want to come back to that thought after we get to Josh and James about their reasons for joining the Marines. Josh?
I knew I wanted to join the military, I think when I was 15. I was pretty young, and I almost immediately settled in the Marine Corps because I didn't want to be in a different service and then look up to them. Like I wanted, I wanted to not have to feel like there's somebody better out there, because that's the impression I had as a teenager. And I think that there's a lot of ways the Marine Corps is different, and I can just think I'll just share two that really, maybe two of the bigger ones in my experience. And the first one is, it starts with boot camp. Boot camp is longer and is, I've never attended any other boot camps, but I'm pretty sure more intense. There's this video out there on YouTube that flips back and forth between Marine Corps boot camp and Army boot camp. And it makes me laugh really, really hard because it'll show two Marine Corps drill instructors just terrorizing somebody. And then it'll show an Army drill sergeant being like, you really need to stop doing, it's just, and I'm sure whoever made it found the most extreme differences that they could, and it's not purely reflective, but it just is so funny to watch. And the fact that Marine Corps boot camp is 13 weeks long, the fact that you get such extensive rifle training, it's just, you are trained more intensively and more extremely. And then the best proof of that is if any Marine wants to join a different service, they can walk right in. They don't have to go through boot camp again.
Yes.
Whereas anybody else that wants to switch has to go through that services boot camp. So that right there is recognition that Marine Corps boot camp is most intense. And then the second piece of it that I'll finish with is that Marine Corps boot camp is more intense and more difficult. But then when you get to the fleet, or even when you get to your training school, your MOS school, or at least I was given a lot. When I arrived at my language school, so I was an Arabic cryptologic linguist, they sent me to study Arabic. I showed up, I think it was, my flight got me in on a Friday night, and I showed up to the duty station in my alphas, a uniform that is used to check in. And the Marine on duty said, "Okay, you're checked in. Report back to the the company gunny Monday morning at 0700." And I said, "Well, what do I do now?" He's like, "It's Friday. Go to town. Leave." And every other service that showed up at our school had to stay in uniform and stay on base, and they had to go through a series of trainings before they were even allowed off base. But I was allowed off base the moment I showed up. And I think that the Marine Corps is tougher on you, but they also treat you like an adult sooner, almost as a compensation for how tough, for how disciplined they are.
So I thought about going into the Army, although, and the contract was open. My cousin, who had already did Desert Storm, was like, "That's dumb. You're not a bullet sponge. You're smarter than that." And I had already talked to the Marines like before that, but I just chose the Army. So I ended up not going with the Army. Talked to the Marine recruiter. It was graduation for school, and the Marine looked at me, and Marine recruiter, because it used to be right here at the mall, and said, "Do you still want to go?" I said, "Yeah. How fast can I leave?" And I left 3 days later. And I'm glad that I did. There's a joke amongst Marines that is talks about, of the 1% of the population that wears the uniform, like 1% of that wears the Marine uniform. It's real small, it's real tight. And just like Haya and Josh both said, it's a little different when you talk to a Marine, because you know what the other branches have gone through, and you know how we're different. Our boot camp longer, our rifle range more stringent, our uniforms I think are a little bit more stringent than others. Like everything that we do has to be, how do they say it in the promotion warrants, above reproach.
Mm-hmm.
That you can't touch us, even our baseline. So we're not talking recon or anything else like that. We always had to be a step above. Army runs for but so long. Navy goes and does this. We run for 3 miles because we're crazy. And it doesn't matter how old you are, you're still going to run 3 miles. You're still going to do your pull-ups. You're still going to do your crunches. We always seem to take it up a notch. It's, as my wife would like to call it, we like to do the extra.
I've heard that term. Like Marines are extra.
We're extra. We're extra for, and a lot of people go, "We're extra for no reason." No, it's who we are. And just like Haya said, when you go up and you talk to people and you're like, "Oh, you were in the Army," and it's like, "Okay, yeah, you were in the Army," and you're like, "You're a Marine." There's a difference in response, the way they look at you, the way they talk to you, the way they greet you, because we are extra and we take it to heart. So it's a beautiful thing.
You guys are the tip of the spear, and there comes with that a certain level of respect. Am I correct?
Absolutely. I mean, if you just look at if you went and looked at manuals, and I'm gonna use Josh's, one of his MOS is one of his favorites, because I know he ran with them a bunch. If you looked at infantry in the Army and look at how they do business, from their structure to how they do this, to how they make maneuvers and blah blah blah, and then you look at the sheer size of whenever they talk about units, what a group of 12 or 15 soldiers are going to do, we train 4 Marines to do the same thing.
Wow.
Because we have to. We're a smaller unit, and so you'll hear it a lot when you talk to a bunch of Marines, when you mention the phrase small unit leadership. There was small units to everything, even the way we fired artillery, the things there was inherent things that we did, and it was just extra. You'd see an Army unit, they would have artillery, they would have an infantry unit attached to them for security. You go to a Marine unit, it's the same guys that were on the gunner, the same guys that are on the howitzer, the same guys that provide security. We did it all. Other units may have a special motor T come in and drive their trucks. We got our own. The same person who drives the truck is the same person who's shooting the cannons, same person that's shooting the rocket launcher, same person that's giving command and orders. We just did things smaller, and because of that, us always having to do extra and be extra, it is.
Right. Hi, I want to come back to into your perspective as a woman coming into the Marines, especially the time that you served. How have you seen the role of women change over since you served until now? And what does that mean to you, being a woman that served in the Marine Corps?
Most of my friends are either Marines or they were the spouses of someone in the military, of places that I was stationed. So I don't come in contact with a lot of new Marine women,
Mhm.
which is unfortunate. Um, even just being in the field of administration, I would love to be able to sit around a table and talk to other women veterans. I don't think we come out as much. I don't think we um, just discuss our time in as much. And I don't think, in some ways, I don't think being a woman in the military is as respected as it should be. So I'm speaking in a very, very broad, very general sense because, of course, we have, helicopter pilots. Of course, they're in intel. Of course, they're commanding, ships and bases and things of that nature. But to have almost the mentorship, um, and I'm speaking from not knowing of anyone that has had one or has one now, that there be mentorship, not just to bring you up and through the ranks, but to say to a woman, there is a place for you here. I don't know if the military now says to women that, you are welcome. We will train you. We will take care of you. We will protect you, and we will not treat you differently.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's that way across the board. If it is, fantastic.
Mhm.
Um, but you also have to consider why people came in. So if someone already thinks 20 years is going to be my minimum if I can, then their thought process is different. Someone else that says, you know what, I'm not sure what I want to do with my life, their thought process is different. If someone else says, listen, I'm here to get an education because there's no jobs in my community, that's a different thought process. So I don't know if the military can flesh that out because you can always turn the tide on the reasons why a person came in. So if they have a good experience, they may stay longer. If they have a not so good experience, they may leave sooner.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to have a nice handful of friends who were female Marines, and I unfortunately did see them be treated differently in a variety of ways, and I think it weighed heavily on their experiences, and they all left. None of them. I had plenty of friends that re-enlisted, and none of my female friends did. And obviously, there's a lot of reasons why you choose to re-enlist, but it wouldn't surprise me if the way they were treated had a pretty big role to play in that decision. And obviously, sexism is everywhere, and I think the Marine Corps probably exacerbates it in certain ways because of the intensity of the environment and because of um, the value placed on kind of macho behavior
Mhm.
that a lot of other males respond to. There are lots of ways to lead that aren't necessarily macho and but are very, very effective, arguably more effective, I think, in a lot of ways. And if someone can't be macho, whether it's because they are a female or because they're a male who just cannot act that way or just doesn't command that type of attention, um, their qualities are overlooked more easily. It's unfortunate.
Mhm. I
I'm
agree.
so glad that I stayed in long enough to watch this thing change because when we started doing mentorship, it was actually a very large thing towards the 2010s. Somebody in the higher level of chain of command, whether you're male or female, you had a master sergeant or a battery gunnery sergeant, somebody that would be like, hey, these are the things you need to do in order to make it to that next gear, because there comes a point when everything gets slowed down in your progression because of people above you and things like that. So you needed to know the things you needed to know in order to make it to that next level, whether it was continuing education or so forth, so on, so like things like that. And I took it to heart whenever I had a female as one of my mentees. And the reason why is because the same thing Josh said, the same thing Haya said, is that they were inherently always treated differently. That they almost had to prove themselves worthy, as if they didn't prove enough, they had to prove themselves worthy. So I made it a personal mission of mine to make sure that they shine brighter at the cost of. So the cost of, you may have to work twice as hard for half as much recognition, but you're going to get it. And I'm going to make sure that you get it. So if they stayed in, they stayed in. And I got lucky because in 10th Marines, we actually had we had female gunnery sergeants, female first sergeants, because we were a regimental unit. So we had a lot of females, whether it was from the administration section to the comm section to the supply to the regimental building. And so my perspective was, I got to see them get mistreated just the same as anybody else. That I'm not going to sit here and mask that, but I took personal investment to make sure that the ones that I could affect, hey, let's get your MCIs done. Let's get this done. Let's get this done. Let's go out to the shooting range and practice, which most women shot better than most men anyhow. Let's go out for a run together. So this way you don't fall out in front of 175 men, and then that's going to be bad. So I had a personal investment because I wouldn't want that to happen to my daughters.
It speaks back to what we've been talking about on the Scuttlebutt, these headlines about integrated training that will eventually come into play at both Parris Island and San Diego. And do you guys feel that the Marines have done enough, or they need to do a lot more? What are your feelings on that to make sure that this is as integrated as it can be and that everybody is respected across the Corps for their ability?
Let me just make one comment, because I can't speak, past my enlistment, which was 1990. The one comment I want to say is that, when I came in, women were considered a distraction, a liability. Like, you're going to cost lives, you're going to cost training, you're going to cost money, and not necessarily there's no place for you here, but and I was at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, which is, ground troops in training. So many of the people that I served under that were higher ranking, I could tell that they knew that they had to treat us minimally well. But I also could see in their faces and how they interacted with us that they felt, having already been in combat, having already served in a combat situation, they, one, did not think we would perform well, and two, we would be a distraction and cost male lives. And, I'm 57 now. I can see that. But at 18, 19, 20, I would have said, I don't understand, that I had 3 older brothers. I can compete with the best of them. But I can see that now from their perspective, because they had been to combat, they had been to war. There were no women present on the front lines.
Now, from me and Josh's standpoint, now watch this. That was 1990 when you walked out. 2012, on my last deployment, we needed females. We had a female engagement team called FET teams. They would get us our intel because the men wouldn't talk to us. The men would want to fight with us. But we started to figure out that these female engagement teams could get intel that we couldn't. They could talk to the women where we couldn't. The women in country knew as much as the men. They were there helping them. So who else would know the inner outs? A man sitting there proud. You understand this, Josh. Those men were proud. They weren't giving up nothing. You might as well just have killed them to get information from them, depending on the situation. But their wives knew, their daughters knew, and we couldn't talk to them. I can't tell you how many female engagement teams saved lives, and I'd take them anywhere. So our Marine Corps is growing up. Does it still need room for growth? Absolutely. But growth, it happens. It may not be as fast as we want it, but it's there. Because I still talk to a few ops chiefs. They got female FDOs. So that means there's a female lieutenant or better sitting at FDC firing those cannons with a male ops chief, no problem.
Yeah, I don't. I got out of the Marine Corps in 2005, and so the mentorship program that James is talking about, I don't have any familiarity with. All I can say is almost watching the news and watching the military change, watching them allow openly homosexual service members serve. Every time the change is suggested or it is pushed for, there's this big pushback says, no, 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 this is gonna happen, or it's gonna be bad that way, or it's gonna make things worse. And as far as I can tell, watching from the sidelines, that's never the case. It never, when female fighter pilots are introduced, it goes great. When openly gay service members are introduced, not a problem. And so, I mean, humans are afraid of change, generally speaking, and the military is really conservative, and so they're even more afraid of change. And yet, to the best of my knowledge, these changes are only going for the better.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to keep talking about all of this. There's so much to dive into in the Marines. I'd love to dive into more of the specific jobs. Maybe we just need to do a part 2 episode of just the Marines again. But for the sake of time and our audience, let's go ahead and jump into our Scuttlebutt round. And I would like to, we usually spin a wheel. I'm going to spin it. And we're going to stop on Josh, if you'd like to give us some scuttlebutt to help us out closing the program today.
Happy to do so. I am part of a program run by the Pittsburgh Public Theater that is doing a veteran storytelling event. The event itself is, what do we say it was, next Thursday? I forget the
Thursday, November 12th, 7 p.m.
And I forget how many there is. There 10 of us or 8 of us. There's a small group of us who have been working with members of Pittsburgh Public Theater. We've been working on a small series of short performances, short storytelling events, and I strongly encourage anybody interested. And if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are, to attend.
We will put up the link to register for that. Again, it's November 12th at 7 p.m. This is 10 or so Marines who told their stories and have curated them into a dramatic piece. Definitely check it out. And Josh is a part of that.
It's not just Marines, though. It's all.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Across the military spectrum.
Yes, correct. Although I do think that Marines are disproportionately represented. We're the smallest service, but we're probably half of this storytelling event.
I feel like that's normal in some way. The Marines show up. Haya, would you like to give us some scuttlebutt?
You had on talking about the tiny homes for veterans.
Yes.
And the resources that they have. So I had seen something, I don't know if that was on CNN Heroes a couple of years back, about a project that might have been similar, but I really, really enjoyed hearing about that because when I was a discharge clerk for the infantry training school and for several other units that I was stationed with, there were a lot of people who either didn't know what they were going to do with their life when they left the military, or they knew that the military was not going to be the place they wanted it to be, that they had hoped to be, getting ranked quickly, being promoted meritoriously, getting choice of duty station, getting bonuses, those things. And there were also those who felt like they were such a failure. Not finishing boot camp, but not finishing infantry training school, or not getting promoted to captain for officers. And so because of that, when people transition out, I know the article was specifically about homeless, but sometimes people come in the military because their home situation in their home state is a crisis. And they're really trying to leave and get out and go do and hopefully do better. Mm-hmm. So I like that there are not just homeless areas, centers and areas, but there are also transitional services for everyone, so that regardless of why you transitioned out, we have support for you. And sometimes you have to help people know what they need and just let them know that it's available and give them access. And other times you have to literally hold their hand. And if you have a family, it's even more critical that you get what you need as soon as you do, before you become homeless. That's not even dealing with maybe alcoholism, drug abuse, mental health issues. Just on a basic level, people need to know what now, because the military does an excellent job of taking care of your every physical need. Every physical need. And then when you leave the military,
It's up to you.
it's not there. And so I find that there's a lot of struggle, and the military, if they haven't already, needs to do a better job of bridging the transitioning out to the back into the civilian sector, because it's not just get a job. Because you need to know how to function in the civilian community. You have not done that for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And the civilian community is not always welcoming because they don't have the regiment and they don't have the discipline. It's private sector. Right. So I love that the homeless community is being taken care of. And I love that it's a community where they all are in the same boat, because we do better when we're all in the same boat. We look after one another, which is one of the reasons why people join fraternities and they join the military.
Mm-hmm. And I'll piggyback on that and speak specifically to what's going on in Kansas City. Brian Myers, a former U.S. Marine corporal, he decided to create a nonprofit called the Veterans Community Project, and they provide tiny homes for veterans in transition. The project consists of 49 houses and was completed in 2019. And the village is also home to a community center where veterans can receive counseling and mentoring. This is after the Department of Housing and Human Development has shown that more than 37,000 veterans are homeless in the U.S. And from these, around 22,000 are living in shelters that do not represent a forever home for them. The Veterans Community Project is 100% funded by donations and relies heavily on local community partnerships and volunteers. You can find more about them on their website at veteranscommunityproject.org. It's really interesting, the community that they've built up. And I agree with you, Haya, whenever they can do more things like this to help the community get back together, help people transition, it's such a thing to see. And that leads me to James on the final word for our Marine Corps Scuttlebutt edition.
So with me having the final word, I'm just going to say, Ra, to my fellow board members, love you, appreciate you. It's almost our birthday, so happy birthday to each and every one of you, and then happy Veterans Day after that, because we have to have our birthday first. Got to celebrate in order to rest. And not but 24 hours ago, our loving Marine Corps posted our Commandant's 245th birthday message, and I hope that you watch it. I still watch it every year. I still get in my feels. I still have a love and appreciation for my Marine Corps. Could I still do it today? Probably not, but my love and appreciation for those who still do. Keep trucking, keep your head low, stay accurate, keep it moving.
Awesome.
I love y'all.
Thank you guys so much for joining us for the Marine Corps Scuttlebutt edition. As our audience, please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, all the fun things that you can do with us on social media. Share us out, spread the Scuttlebutt, and please connect with us too. We'd love to hear from you. And I'm hoping to have you all back again for another episode of Scuttlebutt soon. Thank you, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Have a good day.